Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's me, Mudahar. Today we're going to be putting Linux distros on the political compass. Now, this isn't really where I think the people who use these distros would fall into, but rather where the distro in it of itself would fall into. Everything surrounding the distro, the vibe of the distro. Let's just get it started with Ubuntu. Ubuntu is definitely authoritarian, right? Canonical is this giant company that owns them. They force things upon their users, like Snap, instead of using something more open source like Flatpak. They have telemetry already enabled, and they're just this giant corporation. And because of that, I think that makes them a bit more authoritarian. But they're more right and conservative in the sense that they don't use a rolling release system. They use the LTS structure, which you can kind of think of as like, you have older packages, you're not getting newer packages. And because of that, that makes them a bit more conservative, And this is perfect because the next up is Fedora, who I think is authoritarian left. And they're authoritarian because, much like Ubuntu, they're owned by Red Hat, which is another giant company. They get to decide where Fedora as a project goes. But they're more left because of the rolling release structure of DNF and how they set everything up. You're getting newer packages, which kind of fits this more like progressive like ideology, right? Also, this perfectly fits my Republican and Democrat with exactly the correct color scheme too. We got blue for the Democrats and, well, orange for the Republicans. But if anything, that actually makes it more accurate. Aha, orange man. Linux Mint is definitely the true centrist distro. This is a distro that can be anything for anyone. They're in the middle, flipping hamburgers. There's a reason whenever people recommend a distro to someone, they say Linux Mint because it's such a polished distro. It's just really a better version of Ubuntu for many people, and it doesn't really go either way. You can kind of make it anything, you can kind of do everything, and I think it's a perfect example of like what a centrist distro would be. Arch Linux. Is there anything in the world that brings together furries, trans, software engineers, and people from all walks of life like Arch does? I think they definitely go left libertarian, and this is because of, I think, the AUR. I think when you're left libertarian, you kind of, everybody's kind of equal. A lot of people, they contribute their own little things to the economy and the society as a whole. Someone's making milk, someone's making meat, someone's growing crops. And that's kind of like what the AUR is, right? It's a user-maintained package, so everyone's kind of equal in that sense. And they're definitely progressive because of how often packages are released to the user. If anything, they're probably the most left-wing because they're so progressive with their packages. Packages are being thrown at you. As soon as the latest package comes out, you got it. Now, you might notice I put them not at the lowest of left libertarian, and I did that because of our next distro, NixOS, which is even more left libertarian. Now, but how can NixOS be even more left libertarian than Arch? And I'll tell you why it can be more libertarian. I think it's because of what Nix is, right? Because Nix, you also have a large amount of packages, much like Arch Linux does. But Nix, I think, because what do? You create a bunch of files that make it so that you have reproducibility, right? You have one file that you can send up to multiple machines, and you will get the exact same distro every time because of how Nix is set up, right? It's one file for all the computers, and when you look at all those computers, what are they? They're the same computer, right? Is there anything more left libertarian than everything being exactly the same? Every body being the same. Every machine is the same. That is the Nix philosophy. That is the left libertarian mentality. I saw this video of this guy showing like the ideal like social structure of like hierarchies and stuff. And Nix and Arch kind of both fit in this like a bunch of like just like circles that are of equal size connecting to each other. Gen 2. I'll be honest, whenever I see Gen 2, I think of Mental Outlaw, and that guy is the most right libertarian guy I've ever seen in my life. He loves his privacy, he loves his guns, and he hates paying taxes. Is there anything more right libertarian than that? Now, admittedly, this kind of doesn't really fit Gen 2 as a distro, but hear me out here. When you recompile your Linux kernel on every update, what are you doing as a Gen 2 user? Well, you're turning on your computer and going through CPU cycles, which consumes electricity. And every time you consume electricity, you're killing trees and destroying the climate due to the coal mines that have the coal furnaces that have to be used to create your energy. So in that sense, right, what could be more right libertarian than, hey, I got the money, I can pay for it, I do not care about the economy? That's got to be a right libertarian mindset, right? And you do not trust binaries compiled by the people. Hey, I'll do it myself. Right libertarian, right? Yeah, but honestly, it's probably just because of Mental Outlaw that I associate Gen 2 with right libertarian. It's just he's the only person I know that uses Gen 2. It's Mental Outlaw. It's Mental Outlaw's fault. Hey, don't blame me. Look at Mental Outlaw. Yeah, Mental Outlaw. Debian. Okay, so Debian I don't think goes on the authoritarian or libertarian scale, but I think it definitely goes on the right to left scale, and it's on all the way to the right. I think, is there a distro more conservative than Debian? You're getting packages years after they're released in every other distro. This is there's a reason it's called the most stable distro. It's because everything's stuck 50 years in the past, right? You got geezers using this distro. Though it's the most conservative distros in the history of conservative distros, which is just one, in one sense. It is the oldest distro. It's where, it's the father of Ubuntu, so that definitely got to make it one of the most conservative distros out there. Tails OS. Okay, I think Tails is kind of similar to Debian, but instead of going on the left to right scale, it kind of goes into authoritarian libertarian scale, and it falls all the way down here, right at the very bottom of the libertarian scale. Here's an OS that says, hey, I do not want to be tracked. I don't want Big Brother coming in and looking at everything I'm doing. My data is my data, and I don't want you. It's none of your business what I do with it. They hate the hierarchy of power. They want everything. They want all their confidential information kept to themselves, illegal or not illegal. So. For this distro, everything else is 1984. Okay, so next up is Manjaro. Now, because Manjaro is based off of Arch, it's definitely a left-leaning distro. It is rolling release. But because there's a specialized team behind it that makes a lot of interesting decisions about where to take the distro, they definitely go into the left authoritarian side. Now, if you know your political science, you would know that left authoritarian is also known as communism. And you know that communism doesn't work, just like Manjaro. Lastly, we have Microsoft Windows. Is there any other operating system that forces unnecessary features, has pre-installed software bloat, and completely spies on its users as much as Microsoft does? No, there isn't. And that definitely makes them authoritarian, right? And now that Windows is up here, I guess I have to scale the rest of the OS. I guess, in comparison, Manjaro is definitely left libertarian, Arch is left libertarian, Fedora is left libertarian, Ubuntu is left libertarian, Mint, Tails, Gen 2, Debian. Like in comparison to Windows, this is kind of what it would look like. Maybe I'm being maybe it's like more like this. Yeah. Yeah. All right, that's it. See ya.